Hello everyone. So we are going to talk about climate, seasons, and weather today. You should have your notes already glued in. That would be your vocabulary and your fill in the blank notes. I'm going to go ahead and go through everything in this slides. Then at the end, we're going to write our notes in together in our fill in the blank. And there'll also be some other videos that you can check out to support you along with this one in the Canvas assignment. So you're going to need a pencil, glue stick if you haven't already glued in your notes, and your headphones to make sure you're not distracting anyone else as you listen to these videos. So our I Can statement for today is students will be able to explain the difference between climate, weather, and seasons. So let's talk about some words you need to know before we get started. You need to know what hemispheres are. So hemispheres is how the Earth is divided into 4 sections, but we're going to focus mainly on these two, the northern and the southern hemisphere, and these are divided by an imaginary line called the equator. We live in the northern hemisphere of the world, even though we live in the south of the United States. The entire United States is in the northern hemisphere of the world, of the Earth. Let's also talk about latitudes. These are imaginary horizontal lines. The main one you need to know is the equator, which is the 0 degrees latitude that divides the northern and southern hemisphere. So we're going to start off with seasons, and you might have learned about seasons in the past, but if not, totally okay. So seasons are caused by Earth's tilt on its axis as it revolves around the sun, also known as orbiting around the sun. The northern and southern hemisphere experience opposite seasons. So what this means is as we in the northern hemisphere are in winter, at the same time in the southern hemisphere, they're going to experience summer down here. So it's opposite. When we have summer over here in the northern hemisphere, they're going to experience winter in the southern hemisphere. So take a look at this picture. Over here, we're tilted towards the sun. So in the northern hemisphere, we're tilted towards the sun completely. So this is going to be our summer. Put my pen back on. Summer. Where compared to here, we're tilted completely away. So this is our winter. What's in between winter and summer? We have spring. And in between summer and winter, we have fall. So here we are right now. And as the Earth continues to move its trip around the sun, our days are going to get shorter. We're going to get less sunlight, and it's going to get cooler as we move into winter. So now let's talk about climate. Climate is the average weather in an area over a long period of time. So the climate in Charlotte, North Carolina is humid subtropical. Florida is always sunny and warm year long. So what's important about climate is climate's really determined by the equator. So the equator is that latitude line, that imaginary latitude line that cuts the Earth in half. And so the equator experiences the most amount of sunlight no matter what season it is in. Because the equator is directly in the middle of the Earth, that area is going to get the most amount of sun, the most amount of warmth throughout the entire year as the Earth revolves around the sun. So yes, we have the seasons and the tiltings of the Earth, but at the same time, we have to keep in mind the equator and how hot it is in that area. And as we move away from the equator, it gets cooler. You can see by this thermal map, down here and up here is super far away from that equator I labeled. And so those are your northern and southern poles. Those are super, super cold all year long despite the seasons. Compared to right along the line, you can see it's a really dark colors like that dark red or that like bright yellow. That's going to have a lot of warmth all year long. It's going to be super hot despite the seasons. Like I said, the equator is an imaginary line around the center of the Earth at 0 degrees latitude. A place's distance from the equator determines its climate. So seasons is based on whether you're in the northern and southern hemisphere and where the Earth is around the sun. Climate is based on how far away is where you live from the equator and from that warmth from the equator. So here's another great picture. Here's our equator, our 0 degrees latitude, right here. And as you move away, it gets cooler. No matter what direction you go in, it gets cooler as you move away from the equator. Lastly, let's talk about weather. Weather is what's happening in the atmosphere at a certain period of time. This will be the temperature, sky conditions, air pressure, wind speed, and direction. So the weather outside is cloudy and a little cool. Temperatures in Chicago should reach about 60 degrees today. So weather is what's happening all while seasons and climate is also happening. But weather is what's going on in the sky during whatever season or climate you are in. So atmosphere, as we talked about, is the air around Earth. The weather happens in the atmosphere part closest to us, the troposphere. So weather is not happening up in the atmosphere too high up. It's not happening in space. It's happening in the air that's really close to Earth. So let's take a little practice. Decide whether the following statements describe the weather or the climate of an area. Many places in Canada usually have very cold winters and mild summers. Weather or climate? Take a second to think. If you said climate, you'd be correct because we're talking about the general experience of Canada through its winters and summers. We're not talking about what is happening in the sky this day or this week in Canada. Let's take a look at another one. There's an 80% chance of severe thunderstorms in Florida tomorrow. Weather or climate? If you said weather, you're correct because we're talking about what is happening in the sky in Florida. We're not talking about Florida's general temperatures all year long. We're not talking about Florida's distance from the equator. We're not talking about what season we're in. We're talking about what is happening in the sky sometime soon. Today's temperature should be mild and sunny with a chance of partial cloud cover. Weather or climate? Weather. What is happening right now, sometime soon, in the sky? That's our weather. Last one, Florida usually doesn't have any snow. Weather or climate? Climate. That means Florida really doesn't have snow despite the weather. Its climate is too warm for snow. Let's take a look at these practice questions, and all this will also be linked in your Discovery Ed, in your Canvas assignment to go to Discovery Ed. So practice question number 1, what is the season that the North American continent is in when it's tilted completely away from the sun? So let's draw a picture to help us. Here's our sun. Here's Earth. And we're axis. Here's the northern hemisphere and the southern. So we're tilted completely away. So it's definitely not summer because we have to be tilted towards. And I don't think it's spring. But if it says completely away, that makes me think it's winter, and winter would be correct. See how I annotated crossout answers to help me solve this problem. If we are currently experiencing fall in North American continent, then what is the other side of the world experiencing? So the other side would be referring to the southern hemisphere, and we know that the seasons are opposite compared to the northern and southern hemisphere. So what's the opposite of fall? Right, the opposite of fall is spring. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our notes. At this point, you want to write what I write as we go through in your notebook. I'm going to do the best I can to write it as neatly as possible on my screen. All right, here we go. So the conditions of the atmosphere at a certain time or place is going to be weather. The average weather in an area taken over a long period of time is going to be climate. The air all around Earth is going to be the atmosphere. The imaginary line around the center of the Earth at 0 degrees latitude, right here, is your equator. Half of the Earth, right? We have the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. That's hemisphere. I'm just going to finish it. There we go. Then the imaginary lines across the globe, and that's the horizontal ones, are going to be latitude. And we focus specifically on the latitude 0 degrees, which is the equator. Perfect. So remember, we live in the northern hemisphere, and I want you to add this. We live here. Northern hemisphere. That's all I have for you today. I hope this was helpful. Check out the other links. We're going to have a song about weather. There's also a really good video to help you understand seasons and those Discovery Ed links all in this Canvas for you to work through step by step. This was step 1. This was the first video to watch, so be sure to go through the rest. Great, thanks.